Hello everyone, and welcome back to Game Easy Roll Good. This is my first video after finally finishing all the recording and editing for the base class and subclass changes for the Player's Handbook for Dungeons & Dragons 2024. The Dungeon Master's Guide has had its pre-release for the people who already purchased the book on D&D Beyond. So all that information is out there. Of course, other creators have had the sneak preview of the book for quite some time, so I'm just kind of playing catch up now, of course, like I have been with the Player's Handbook as well. I've been super busy. I haven't been able to put out the video that I wanted to this weekend, which was expanding further on my last weekend's Ranger build video. Still planning on putting that out. I was able to actually put in a subclass and kind of work out more damage and things that way and see how that works out. Maybe I'll get that done by next weekend. And if you're new to this channel, or if you just keep coming back to this video and you haven't subscribed to my channel yet, please consider hitting that subscribe button. It helps me out quite a bit. But moving on from that, real quick, I wanted to throw this together since we have the Dungeon Master's Guide information. We're looking at the new magic items for the Dungeon Master's Guide for Dungeons & Dragons 2024. And again, these are going to be only things that are new, not things that are changed. So let's go ahead and get into it and see what we're working with. So starting with new-ish magic items, these are items that were borrowed from other books but are now officially published in the Dungeon Master's Guide for 2024. So again, if you are playing in a situation where your DM is only using 2024 rules and forward, these are the magic items that weren't in the previous Dungeon Master's Guide that are now in the Dungeon Master's Guide for 2024. I'm not going to take the time to read through all the descriptions because there's just actually quite a lot of them and they've existed before. So those of us who have been playing the game for a while are a little more aware of what they are, and a lot of them are just flavor items. They're not very powerful items. The vast majority of them are from Xanathar's Guide to Everything. There's one from Tasha's and one from Waterdeep Dungeons of the Mad Mage. So let's go ahead and just kind of run through those real quick and see what we have. So starting off, we have the Adamantine Weapon. Notably, the Adamantine weapons, again, these always existed. They just weren't previously considered magical items. We have a Bead of Nourishment. We have the Bead of Refreshment. We have Candle of the Deep, Cast Off Armor, Cloak of Billowing, the Cloak of Many Fashions, Clothes of Mending, the Dark Shard Amulet, Earhorn of Hearing, Ursat's Eye, Hat of Vermin, Hat of Wizardry, Heward's Handy Spice Pouch, Horn of Silent Alarm, Instrument of Illusions, Instrument of Scribing, Lock of Trickery, Moon-Touched Sword, Nature's Mantle, Orb of Direction, Orb of Time, Perfume of Bewitching, Pipe of Smoke Monsters, Pole of Angling, Pole of Collapsing, Pot of Awakening, Potion of Comprehension, Rope of Mending, Ruby of the War Mage, Shield of Expression, Silvered Weapons. And again, much like the Adamantine weapon, silvered weapons have always existed, but they just weren't considered magical. They were just kind of exceptional, mundane items, if that makes sense, kind of a oxymoron. But they are now just considered magical weapons. Smoldering Armor, Staff of Adornment, Staff of Bird Calls, Staff of Flowers, Talking Doll, Veteran's Cane, Wand of Conducting, and the last one here is Wand of Pyrotechnics. Moving on to the actual magic items. So those are all just things that were borrowed from, again, Xanathar's Guide to Everything, Tasha's Cauldron of Everything, and I think it was the Potion of Comprehension that was from Dungeons of the Mad Mage, but the vast majority of them were from Xanathar. So let's get into the actual new magic items. Again, these were not in any previous books. They may have been in older editions and maybe be new to 5th edition, but I think the vast majority of them are just plain new or references to older things. So starting with Baba Yaga's Dancing Broom. It is an uncommon item. It requires attunement, a wondrous item. The Archfey Baba Yaga crafted many of these magic brooms. No two appear exactly alike. While holding the broom, you can take a magic action to transform it into an animated broom under your control. The broom then moves into an unoccupied space as close to you as possible. The broom acts immediately after you on your initiative count and remains animate until you take a bonus action and use a command word to render it inanimate. On your turn, you can mentally command the animated broom if it's within 30 feet of you and you don't have the incapacitated condition, no action required. You can decide what action the broom takes and where it moves during its next turn, or you can issue it a general command such as to attack your enemies or guard a location. If the broom is reduced to 0 hit points, it shatters and is destroyed. If the broom reverts to its inanimate form before losing all of its hit points, it regains all of them. So the no two appear exactly alike is basically code for it looks however you want it to look. You can't use it to fly, which is a little sad. Of course, there are brooms of flight, but you would hope that a witch's broom would be able to fly. Notably, the animated broom only has a 15 armor class and 17 average hit points, so it's not something you can really keep as a combat pet for a long time. Otherwise, it'll just get destroyed pretty quickly, to be honest. But if you're just like having fun in town, maybe you'll go into a tavern and challenge people to fight your broom, and the broom will probably win the vast majority of the time just because it has like 4 times the hit points of the average commoner. So that's something you could do if you really wanted to. Moving on to the Cauldron of Rebirth. This is a very rare wondrous item. Requires a druid or a warlock to attune to it. It is a tiny pot. It can be used as a spellcasting focus, and it functions as a suitable component for the scrying spell. It has a brew potion feature. It says when you finish a long rest, you can use the cauldron to create a potion of healing greater, which takes 1 minute. The potion lasts for 24 hours and loses its magic if it's not consumed. I mean, does that mean that you get to keep the bottle then? It doesn't say that it disappears. It just says you create a potion of healing, which would be the vial as well. But then it loses its magic, but I guess you still have a vial, so you just have infinite vials if you wanted to. And then Raise Dead. As a magic action, you can cause the cauldron to grow large enough for a medium creature to crouch within. You can revert the cauldron to its normal size as a magic action, harmlessly shunting anything that can't fit inside into the nearest unoccupied space. If you place a corpse of a humanoid into the cauldron and cover the corpse with 200 pounds of salt, which costs 10 gold, for at least 8 hours, the salt is consumed and the creature is returned to life as if by Raised Dead at the next dawn. Once used, this property can't be used again for 7 days. So 1 greater healing potion per day and a massive discount on Raised Dead is actually pretty cool. Raised Dead costs like 500 gold if I recall correctly, so that's a discount of 490 gold. You just have to wait 8 hours. Probably, I think I would have liked to see Reincarnate instead of Raised Dead, just because I think that's a funner spell. Just have someone change their species suddenly. But I mean, still, I can't complain about this item. It's still actually very, very cool. The Cube of Summoning, a rare wondrous item. This tiny cube looks like a jack-in-the-box, and you wind its crank as a magic action. A merry tune emits from the box, and the lid opens, and a creature appears in the nearest unoccupied space. The lid closes and the lid otherwise can't be opened. You roll on the Cube of Summoning table to determine which spell the cube casts to summon the creature. The spell is cast at level 5 and doesn't require concentration, and the summoned creature views you as its summoner. Once the cube summons a creature, it can't do so until the next dawn. So you roll a d6, and then on a 1 you get Summon Aberration, on 2 you get Summon Beast, at 3 you get Summon Construct, at 4 you get Summon Dragon, at 5 you get Summon Elemental, and then at 6 you get Summon Fae. So again, all of these are cast at 5th level, which means that they would all, I believe, they all have that thing where they get when they use their attack action, they get a number of attacks equal to the spell level divided by 2 rounded down. So at 5th level, they each have 2 attacks when they take the attack action, so that's pretty cool. And again, Wizards of Coast really seems to love their summoning spells in 2024. We saw in the class and subclass reviews that many of the spell lists, like the prepared spell list, especially for the subclasses, a lot of them had summoning spells added to them. Moving on to the Demonicon of Igwilv. This is an artifact, requires attunement, and is a wondrous item. So there's some flavor text here at the top, but then it says Abyssal Lore. You can reference the Demonicon whenever you make an intelligence check to discern information about demons, or a wisdom survival check related to the Abyss. When you do so, you have advantage on the check. Containment. The first 10 pages of the Demonicon are blank. As a magic action while holding the book, you can target a fiend you can see that is trapped within the area of a magic circle spell. Fiend must succeed on a DC 20 charisma saving throw with disadvantage, or become trapped within one of the Demonicon's blank pages, which fills with writing detailing the trapped creature's widely known name and depravities. Once used, this action can't be used again until the next dawn. So notably, it says it's widely known name, not its true name, so it doesn't give you the true name of the demon. And then it continues, when you finish a long rest, if you and the Demonicon are on the same plane of existence, one trapped creature within the book can attempt to possess you. You make a DC 20 charisma saving throw. On a failed save, you are possessed by the creature, which controls you like a puppet. As a magic action, the possessing creature can release you and appear in the closest unoccupied space to you. On a successful save, the fiend can't try to possess you again for 7 days, but another fiend trapped in the book can certainly try. When the tome is discovered, it has 1d4 fiends occupying its pages, typically an assortment of demons. This is actually pretty cool, and this is just the start of it. There's actually a whole other half of this that I have on the next slide. But I think the second half of the containment feature definitely begs you to have a bag of holding or some sort of extra dimensional space to keep it in. Otherwise, you're going to be risking getting possessed by a demon pretty easily every morning. A DC 20 charisma save is nothing to scoff at, even for people who are good at charisma saves. So moving on to the rest of it. We have Ensnarement. It says, while carrying the book, whenever you've cast a magic circle naming only fiends or cast planar binding targeting a fiend, the spell is cast at 9th level, regardless of what spell slot you use, if any. And then additionally, the fiend has disadvantage on its saving throw against the spell. So since you cast it at 9th level, regardless of whatever spell slot you cast it at, if you even used a spell slot to cast it, the upcasting for both of these spells only increases the duration. So for Magic Circle, this would be a total of 7 hours at 9th level. And then for Planar Binding, it would be for 366 days at 9th level. There's also a feature called Fiendish Scourging. While carrying the book, when you make a damage roll for a spell you cast against a fiend, you use the maximum possible result instead of rolling. And then random properties, the artifact has the following random properties based on the Dungeon Master's Guide and the artifacts list. So it gets 2 minor beneficial properties, 1 minor detrimental property, and 1 major detrimental property. And then as for spells, the book has 8 charges and regains 1d8 expended charges daily at dawn. While holding the book, you can take a magic action to cast one of the spells, save DC 20, on the following table. The table indicates how many charges you must expend to cast the spell. Magic Circle costs 1, Magic Jar costs 3, Planar Ally costs 3, Planar Binding costs 2, Plane Shift to the Abyss only costs 3, Summon Fiend costs 3, and then Tasha's Hideous Laughter has 0 cost. Then there's Destroying the Demonomicon. To destroy the book, 6 different demon lords must tear out a sixth of the book's pages. If this occurs, the pages reappear after 24 hours. Before all those hours pass, anyone who opens the book's remaining binding is transported to a nascent layer of the abyss that lies hidden within the book. At the heart of this deadly semi-sentient domain lies a long-lost artifact, Brazer Blue's Staff. If the staff is dragged from the pocket plane, the tome is reduced to a mundane, out-of-date copy of the Tome of Zix, the work that served as the foundation of the Demonomicon of Igwilv. The Tome of Zix can be destroyed like any ordinary book. Once the staff emerges, the Demon Lord Fraz Urblu knows instantly. So, interesting. I don't know how many of us will ever get our hands on such an item, but it is a very interesting item if you ever do get a hold of it. Then we get to the Energy Bow. So this is a very rare attunement required longbow or short bow. You get a +1 to attack and damage rolls made with this magic weapon, which has no string. Each time you pull your arm back in a firing motion, a magical arrow is made of golden energy that appears knocked and ready to fire. An arrow produced by this weapon deals force damage instead of piercing on a hit, and it disappears after it hits or misses the target. Until it disappears, the arrow emits a bright light in 20-foot radius and dim light for an additional 20 feet. The weapon has the following additional properties. Arrow of Restraint. Whenever you use this weapon to make a ranged attack against a creature, you can try to restrain the target instead of dealing damage to it. If the arrow hits, the target must succeed on a DC 15 strength saving throw or have this restrained condition for 1 minute. As an action, a creature restrained by the arrow can make a DC 20 strength athletics check to try and break the restraint, ending the effect on itself on a success. Arrow of Transport. As a magic action, you can fire 1 arrow from this weapon at a target you can see within 60 feet of yourself. The target can be either a willing, medium, or smaller creature, or an object that isn't being worn or carried, provided that the object is small enough to fit within a 5-foot cube. The arrow teleports the target to an unoccupied space you can see within 10 feet of you. Energy Ladder. As a magic action, you can loose a flurry of energy arrows from this weapon at a wall up to 60 feet away from yourself. The arrows become glowing rungs that stick out of the wall, forming a magical ladder up to 60 feet along the wall. The ladder lasts for 1 minute before disappearing. So notably, this is Hank's bow from the Dungeons & Dragons old cartoon from way back. And the fact that there's actually no limit on the uses, on the features for this bow, the Arrow of Restraint, Arrow of Transport, and the Energy Ladder, that's actually pretty nice. That means that you just can do this all the time. And I'm pretty sure there's a lot of cheese that you can do with like the Arrow of Transport for sure. Even the Energy Ladder, being able to just climb up any wall, without any problems is also very cool. It is just a +1 weapon, but the fact that you just have all of those features all the time is actually pretty great. We have Enspelled Armor. This has a varying rarity, requires attunement, and it can be any light, medium, or heavy armor. It says bound into this armor is a spell of 8th level or lower. The spell is determined when the armor is created, and it must belong to the Abjuration or Illusion School of Magic. The armor has 6 charges and regains 1d6 expended charges daily at dawn. While wearing the armor, you can expend 1 charge to cast its spell. The level of the spell bound into the armor determines the spell's saving throw DC and attack bonus, as well as the armor's rarity, as shown in the following table. So you can go ahead and just read that on your own here. I'm not going to go through each little detailed item there. But I think the fact that up to 6 free casts of a spell up to 8th level, depending on how this is created, this sounds like something that would be even something that we could craft as a magic item as well if you use the magic crafting rules. If you're able to do that and you put an 8th level spell and you can cast it for free 6 times per day, even a 7th, 6th, like there are so many spells that if you're able to cast them for free multiple times per day, that they're very good. So this is actually a very, very interesting item, and it's probably going to cause a lot of shenanigans for sure to happen at the tables. Additionally, there's also an Enspelled Staff and an Enspelled Weapon. I'm not going to go through the actual descriptions of these. They're both functionally very similar to the Enspelled Armor. The staff can hold any spell school of magic. The weapon can hold Conjuration, Evocation, Necromancy, or Transmutation. The staff itself has a chance to be rendered into a mundane quarterstaff if you use the last charge. And you roll it, basically if you use the last charge, you roll a d20. If you roll a 1, then it just becomes a quarterstaff and it's no longer magical. Moving on to the Executioner's Axe. This is a very rare weapon. It can be a battle axe, great axe, halberd, or hand axe. You gain a +1 bonus to attack rolls and damage with this weapon. And then any humanoid you hit with a weapon takes 2d6 slashing damage, and you gain temporary hit points equal to that extra damage dealt. So of course this is very gross against humanoids. Otherwise it's just a +1 weapon. And of course it's important to remember that humanoids actually refers to the monster typing, not just the shape or appearance of the monster. I know sometimes that can be a little confusing, especially for newer players. There's a Hag Eye. This is an uncommon wondrous item. It has 3 charges. While wearing or holding this item, you can expend 1 charge and cast Dark Vision, targeting yourself only, or see invisibility. The Hag Eye regains all expended charges daily at dawn. It has a feature called Coven Sensor. The Hag Eye is usually entrusted to a Hag's minion for safekeeping and transport. The magic action, a Hag who belongs to the Coven that created the Hag Eye can see what the Hag Eye sees, and if the Hag and the Hag Eye are on the same plane of existence. This effect lasts as long as the Hag maintains concentration. Multiple Hags in the Coven can see through the Hag Eye simultaneously. Creating a Hag Eye. Only a Hag Coven can craft this item, which is made from a real eye coated in varnish and fitted into a pendant or other wearable item. A Hag Coven can only have 1 Hag Eye at a time, and creating a new one requires all 3 members of the Coven to perform a special rite. This rite takes 1 hour, and the Hags can't perform it if 1 or more of them has the incapacitated condition. If the Hags take any other actions during this rite, the rite fails and ends. This is actually previously an item that was mentioned under the Hag entry in the Monster Manual, and it's now just an official magic item, and it's located with all the other magic items in the DMG, of course. There's the Potion of Greater Invisibility. So it's a very rare potion. The potion's container looks empty, but it feels as though it holds liquid. When you drink the potion, you become invisible for an hour. So this is much like the Potion of Invisibility, but it's just greater because it uses the actual greater invisibility conditions where it doesn't break if you attack or cast a spell or anything like that. You're just completely invisible for 1 hour. We have the Potion of Pugilism. After you drink this potion, each unarmed strike you make deals an extra 1d6 force damage on hit, and the effect lasts 10 minutes. This potion is a thick green fluid that tastes like spinach, which of course is a Popeye the Sailor reference. I know that they mentioned this on the preview videos for the Dungeon Master's Guide on the D&D YouTube channel. We have a prosthetic limb. This is a magic item that replaces a lost limb, a hand, an arm, a foot, a leg, or a similar body part. While the prosthetic is attached, it functions identically to the part it replaces. You can detach it or reattach it as a magic action, and it can't be removed against your will while you are alive. I think it is good that we just have this now. I think we've kind of been asking for it for a long time, or maybe we just kind of been doing it at our tables regardless, but it's nice to actually see that representation in the book. And of course, I think this actually makes a really good base to improve upon as an actual magic item. So since there's rules for magic item crafting in the DMG, that you could take a prosthetic limb for someone who maybe lost their limb and create a magic item out of it, in addition to actually them having a functional limb. I think that's just a cool idea. Moving on to the rival coin. This is just a common wondrous item. This gold coin has a creature embossed on each side. The 2 depicted creatures must be famous rivals or enemies of each other. For example, a rival coin might show Igvilv on one side and Mordenkainen on the other, or Vengar on one side and Tiamat on the other. One of these figures is on the head side of the coin and the other is tails. Coin has 1 charge and regains its expended uses daily at dawn. You can take a magic action to toss the coin, expending its charge. Roll any die to determine whether the coin comes up head as an even number or tails as an odd number. The roll also determines the effect. So heads, target 1 creature you can see within 60 feet of yourself. The target must succeed on a DC 13 Wisdom saving throw. On a failed save, the target takes 2d4 psychic damage and has disadvantage on the next attack roll it makes before the end of its next turn. On a successful save, it takes half as much damage only. And then if it's tails, you take 1d4 psychic damage. So it doesn't require attunement. So I mean, technically anyone who has the coin could use this. So no matter how you use it, I don't know. It's basically just kind of like a flavor item, but you can also just use it to explode a commoner once per day, I guess, because they only have 4 hit points. So depending on how you roll, you might just like kill them, or you can make them flip the coin. And if they get tails and they roll max on the 1d4, then they're just dead. So that's kind of funny. I don't know. Still just kind of a little cool magic item. Moving on, we have the Scroll of Titan Summoning. This is a legendary spell scroll. It says, when you take a magic action to read the scroll, a particular Titan named in the scroll appears in an unoccupied space on the ground or in water that you can see within 1 mile of yourself. The DM picks a suitable Titan or determines it randomly by rolling on the table below. The Titan is hostile toward all other creatures and disappears when it drops to 0 hit points. If the Titan is summoned into a space that isn't large enough to contain it, the summoning fails and the scroll is wasted. So you roll a d100. On a 1 to 15, you get an Animal Lord. On 16 to 30, you get a Blob of Annihilation. And I'm assuming all of these things that are in black here are coming up in the monster manual for 2025, I guess. Because they're in black, there's no links to them yet. In 31 to 45, we have a Colossus. 46 to 60, we have Elemental Cataclysm. 61 to 75, we have an Empyrean. 76 to 90, we have an Kraken. Of course, the Kraken requires a body of water large enough to contain it. And then 91 to 100, of course, then summons the Tarask. So this is, of course, a new item. It's a new-ish, kind of. There was previously a scroll of Tarask summoning that existed, but this was actually limited to a specific adventure. So it wasn't something that you could just necessarily find in a lot of places unless your DM put it there. Moving on to the Spirit board, we have a very rare Wondrous item. This ornate wooden board has the letters of the common alphabet printed on one side, alongside the words yes and no, and symbols representing weal and woe. The board comes with a heart-shaped wooden planchette. This planchette must be resting on the lettered side of the board for the board's magic to function. This board has 3 charges and it regains 1 expended charge daily at dawn. While touching the planchette, you can take 1 minute to cast one of the spells on the table below. The table indicates how many charges you must expend to cast the spell. As you cast the spell, you call on the spirits of the dead to help guide the planchettes across the board's surface, answering your questions by pointing to the letters or words on the board. So you can cast Augury for 1 charge, or you can cast Commune for 3 charges. This is basically just a D&D Ouija board. They just can't call it that, I guess. We have a Sylvan Talon. Again, this is a common item, a common weapon, a dagger, rapier, scimitar, short sword, sickle, or spear. Requires attunement. While this weapon is on your person, you understand the non-written communication of all Fae, and they understand yours. So non-written, so only verbal communication. Then Secret Message, as a magic action, you can use the weapon to cast a message. Once this property is used, you can't use it again until the next dawn. And then, of course, you just have all the normal weapon properties there. A nice little flavor item, but I don't really understand why it needs attunement. Again, it is functionally just the weapon that you have. It's just magical. It allows you to cast message once per day and then allows you to communicate normally with other Fae creatures. I don't think any of that is particularly powerful enough to require attunement, but I guess it is what it is. Moving on, we have the Thunderous Great Club. So this is a very rare Great Club specifically that requires attunement. It says, while you're attuned to this magic weapon, your strength is 20 unless your strength is already equal to or greater than that score. The weapon deals an extra 1d8 of thunder damage to any creature that it hits, and an extra 3d8 thunder damage to objects it hits that aren't being worn or carried. And then the weapon has the following properties. Clap of Thunder. As a magic action, you can strike the weapon against a hard surface to create a loud clap of thunder, audible out to 300 feet. You also create a 30-foot cone of the thunderous energy. Each creature in the cone must succeed a DC 15 strength saving throw or have the prone condition. Non-magical objects in the cone that aren't being worn or carried take 3d8 thunder damage. Earthquake. As a magic action, you can strike the weapon against the ground to create an intense seismic disturbance in a 50-foot radius centered on the point of impact. Structures in contact with the ground in that area take 50 bludgeoning damage, and each creature on the ground in that area must succeed on a DC 20 dexterity saving throw or have the prone condition. If that creature is also concentrating, it must succeed on a DC 20 constitution saving throw or its concentration is broken. In addition, you can cause a 30-foot deep, 10-foot wide fissure to open up on the ground anywhere in the area. Any creature on a spot where the fissure opens must make a DC 20 dexterity saving throw, falling into the fissure on a failed save or moving into the fissure's edge on a successful one. Any creature on a spot where the fissure opens collapses into the fissure. Any structure on a spot where the fissure opens collapses into the fissure. And then once you use this property, it can't be used again until the next dawn. And then, of course, proficiency with a Great Club allows you to add proficiency bonus to the attack rolls you make with it. And then it has the push mastery, so you can use the push mastery with the Great Club because it is still just a Great Club. So much like the bow, the energy bow from before, this is a reference to the old Dungeons and Dragons cartoon as well. Both this and the bow are actually kind of nuts. I mean, this isn't a plus anything weapon, but it does just set your strength to 20, and there's not many very rare items that do that. You usually need to get to like legendary or even artifact weapons, like the Zariel's sword. I can't remember if it has a specific name, but that sets your charisma to 20, like through a whole transformation or whatever. But this, while you're attuned to it, your just strength is 20, so you can have a very powerful build that way. And then you just have these actions, you know, you can use the Clap of Thunder as many times as you want. The Earthquake is basically just like the Earthquake spell. So you only get to use it once per day, but that's still once per day that you can do that. And it is a very powerful spell with DC 20 save on all those effects. I mean, I could see this like in one shots where if the DM says, hey, you can grab, you know, one of each rarity of magic item up to very rare, that you might be like, I'm just going to grab this and build around the fact that I can just have a 20 strength and dump that when I'm building my stats and things like that. It isn't a maul, it doesn't do 2d6, but it does do 2d8 because a Great Club does have a 1d8 bludgeoning damage, and this automatically deals 1d8 thunder damage on top of that. It isn't a heavy weapon, so you can't do a Great Weapon Master with it, but it's still pretty good. I'm kind of a fan of it. I might, you know, someday maybe I'll get to play with it, but I kind of like this one a lot. And then finally, we have the Wraps of Unarmed Power. It has a varied rarity depending on the power of the item. And then is a wondrous item, of course. It says, while wearing these wraps, you have a bonus to attack and damage rolls made with your unarmed strikes. The bonus is determined by the wrap's rarity, and those strikes deal your choice of force damage or their normal type. So at uncommon, it's a +1 bonus. At rare, it's a +2 bonus. And at very rare, it's a +3 bonus. So this is going to be, of course, decent for unarmed builds, and it doesn't require attunement, which is very helpful. And basically what this is, it's basically just the +1, 2, 3 weapon for people who are building unarmed strikes. So if you are in a situation where you'd be giving your unarmed fighters or your martial characters their +1 weapons or +2 weapons or whatever it is, and you have like a monk in your party or like an unarmed fighter or unarmed other class, you can just give them this item instead, and that way they basically have their +1 weapon for their fists essentially. So that's very helpful. So that is all of the new magic items in the Dungeon Master's Guide for 2024. Let me know which one is your favorite. I was kind of hoping, maybe, I don't know if I feel spoiled, but I was kind of hoping for more. I know there's so many that they borrowed from older books, and maybe that's why I feel that way. You know, the energy bow and that hammer were also very, very cool items. There's a ton of other stuff in there that on the new items that was actually also pretty cool. I don't know. I feel like I was hoping for more. Maybe there's other changes to magic items that are pretty cool too. I haven't quite been able to, I haven't had the time to dig into it. But let me know down in those comments what you think of the new magic items, or at least, or the new-ish magic items even. Were you kind of hoping for more new magic items? Are there any cool combinations with some of the new magic items that you've kind of uncovered or seen other people talk about? I'd be interested to hear about that as well. So again, let me know down in those comments. And again, while you're going down to those comments, please hit that like button. If you haven't taken the time to subscribe to this channel yet, please hit that subscribe button. This Wednesday, we have the final big release of the spellcasting subclass changes, all 6 of those videos. Those will be coming out in a playlist. This is my final week doing a 6-video release on Wednesdays, and I'm so happy about it, to be honest. It's so much work, and it's been putting me kind of behind, to be honest, which is why I wasn't able to get the video I wanted to get out this weekend. But you have that to look forward to, and for those of you who have your notifications turned on, you don't need to worry about getting bombarded on Wednesdays anymore. So again, I appreciate all your guys' time, and I'll see you on the next one.